Every avoidant secretly hopes you will respond in a very specific way after they reject you. Most people assume that when someone walks away, becomes distant, or pushes them out of their life, the only thing that person wants is complete separation. But with avoidant individuals, things are often much more complicated than they appear on the surface. Being rejected by someone with avoidant tendencies can feel like experiencing emotional whiplash. One moment, they may be open, affectionate, and fully present with you. They may make you feel seen, valued, and deeply connected. They might share personal thoughts, show warmth, and create moments where you believe the relationship is moving in a beautiful direction. You start feeling safe with them, and you begin trusting the bond you are building together. Then suddenly, something changes. They become quieter. They create emotional distance. Their messages become shorter. Their energy feels different. The person who once seemed so close begins acting like they need space from you. It can feel like you went from being important to being invisible overnight. That sudden shift can leave you confused, hurt, and questioning everything. You may find yourself asking, "What happened? Did I say something wrong? Was I too much? Did I care too deeply?" You might replay every conversation in your mind, searching for the exact moment when things changed. You may start blaming yourself and wondering if there was something you could have done differently. But the truth is, many times, their withdrawal is not a reflection of your value or your ability to love. It is connected to their own internal struggles, emotional defenses, and the way they have learned to handle closeness. For someone with avoidant patterns, intimacy can sometimes create feelings they don't know how to process. The deeper the connection becomes, the more vulnerable they feel. And vulnerability can bring up fear, discomfort, and the instinct to protect themselves by creating distance. This is the part that many people misunderstand. They believe an avoidant pulls away because they do not care. They believe distance means there were no feelings involved. But sometimes the opposite can be true. Sometimes the connection itself becomes the thing that triggers their fear. The more meaningful someone becomes, the more their emotional defenses may activate. And here is where it gets interesting. Even after an avoidant rejects you, even after they step back and act emotionally detached, there is often a response they secretly hope you will give. They are not necessarily hoping that you will chase them endlessly. They are not waiting for paragraphs explaining why you belong together. They are not looking for you to prove your love by fighting harder. What they often respond to most strongly is something they rarely expect: emotional strength. They notice when someone can care about them but still choose themselves. They notice when someone can feel hurt but still remain calm. They notice when someone can accept rejection without losing their dignity. That kind of response creates a completely different emotional experience for them. Avoidant individuals often feel a sense of safety when there is distance between themselves and another person. Distance allows them to feel in control. It creates space where they do not have to face uncomfortable emotions or the fear of becoming too dependent on someone else. When they pull away, they may unconsciously expect a certain reaction. They may expect you to become anxious, to seek reassurance, to ask what went wrong, or to convince them that the relationship is worth saving. They may expect emotional resistance because, in their mind, closeness has often been connected with pressure. So when someone chases after them immediately after rejection, even though it comes from a place of love and a desire to repair things, it can accidentally confirm their existing beliefs. Their nervous system may interpret that pursuit as proof that relationships come with expectations and emotional demands. They may think, "This is exactly what I was afraid of. If I let someone get close, I will lose my freedom. I will have to constantly manage someone else's emotions. I will feel trapped." But something completely different happens when you stop chasing and respond with calm confidence, when you do not beg for another chance, when you do not send countless messages trying to explain yourself, when you do not abandon your own needs just to make them stay. Instead, you simply acknowledge their choice and step away with self-respect. That reaction can create a moment of reflection for them, because it is not what they expected. They expected emotional pressure, they expected conflict, they expected you to prove their fears right. But instead, they see someone who can love deeply without becoming dependent. They see someone who can experience pain without creating chaos. They see someone who respects both their feelings and their own worth. And that can be surprisingly powerful. Many avoidants secretly hope that after they reject someone, that person will quietly let them go. They may want you to accept the distance and continue living your life, not necessarily because they want to erase you completely, but because your calm response allows them to avoid facing the deeper emotions they are running from. When you react with anger, desperation, or emotional instability, it gives them an easy explanation for why they left. They can tell themselves, "This is why I keep my distance. Relationships become stressful. People expect too much. I was right to protect myself." Your reaction becomes evidence that supports their emotional walls. But when you respond with maturity and peace, that explanation starts to fall apart. They can no longer simply blame the relationship or blame your reaction. Instead, they are left alone with their own thoughts, feelings, and memories. They may begin remembering the good moments. They may start thinking about the connection they walked away from. They may wonder why someone who cared about them was able to step back so calmly. They may begin questioning whether the problem was truly the relationship or whether it was their own fear of getting close. This does not mean every avoidant will immediately return or suddenly become emotionally available. Healing and change require self-awareness, and no one can force another person to grow. But your response can reveal something important. Your emotional power does not depend on whether someone chooses you. The strongest thing you can do after rejection is not to convince someone of your worth. It is to remember your worth without needing their validation. Because the moment you stop chasing someone who has chosen distance, you create space for clarity. You give them the opportunity to feel the absence of your presence, and more importantly, you give yourself the opportunity to reconnect with your own strength. Sometimes, the most powerful message you can send is not through words, it is through your ability to walk away with peace, knowing that love should never require you to abandon yourself. But when you respond with calmness, dignity, and emotional strength, something completely different happens. When you walk away without blaming them, without trying to make them feel guilty, and without demanding that they understand your pain, you create a space they are not prepared for. They are left alone with the silence. And in that silence, something powerful begins to happen. A mirror appears. It is a mirror that reflects the emotions, fears, and patterns they have spent years trying to avoid. For a long time, they may have been able to escape uncomfortable feelings by creating distance, shutting down, or convincing themselves that leaving was easier than staying. But when you no longer chase them, argue with them, or try to pull them back, they lose the distraction. Now they have to face themselves. This is something many people misunderstand about avoidant individuals. They often appear emotionally cold, unaffected, or completely detached. Their behavior can make it seem like they do not care, like losing someone means nothing to them. But underneath that protective exterior, there can often be a much more complicated emotional world. Many avoidants are not empty of feelings. They are overwhelmed by feelings they do not know how to handle. Behind the distance can be fear, insecurity, shame, and old emotional wounds that have never truly been addressed. Their walls are not always built because they feel nothing. Sometimes those walls exist because they feel too much and do not know how to safely express it. They are not necessarily heartless. They are often guarded, and when you stop reacting in the way they expected, you remove the shield that allowed them to avoid their own discomfort. Your silence becomes a reflection. Your absence becomes a moment where they can no longer blame the situation, the relationship, or your reaction. They begin facing the questions they were trying not to ask. Why did I push someone away who cared about me? Why did I feel the need to escape? Was the problem really the connection, or was it my fear of being vulnerable? That quiet strength you show is not a game. It is not a strategy designed to make them chase you. It is simply the result of choosing yourself and refusing to abandon your own emotional needs. And that is the one thing they often never expected. Many avoidant individuals are familiar with a certain emotional pattern. They create distance, and the other person tries harder. They pull away, and the other person reaches closer. They become unavailable, and the other person fights to restore the connection. It becomes an emotional tug-of-war. They pull the rope one way, and you pull it back the other way. But what happens when you stop holding the rope? What happens when you simply let go? That is where everything changes. When you say, "I respect your space," and you genuinely mean it, not as a hidden attempt to make them come back, but as a true reflection of your self-respect, your entire energy changes. You are no longer trying to convince someone to choose you. You are no longer trying to earn love from someone who is unable to fully receive it. You are showing that you can care about someone while still honoring yourself. And that can completely disrupt an avoidant's usual emotional pattern, because suddenly they are the one experiencing uncertainty. They are the one wondering. They are the one trying to understand what happened. Avoidant individuals often feel comfortable when they control the level of closeness and distance in a relationship. They decide when to move closer, when to step back, and how much emotional access another person receives. But when you calmly step away, they no longer control the entire dynamic. And for someone who relies on distance to feel safe, experiencing uncertainty they did not create can feel surprisingly uncomfortable. They may begin noticing the difference between someone who depends on their attention and someone who chooses their own peace. Letting go after rejection does not mean you never cared. It does not mean your feelings were fake. It does not mean the connection was meaningless. It means you care enough about yourself to stop participating in a situation where you are the only person fighting for closeness. You do not have to prove your value to someone who is unable or unwilling to recognize it. Instead, you turn your attention back toward yourself. You begin healing the parts of you that were triggered by their withdrawal. You start questioning the beliefs that made their silence feel like a statement about your worth. You learn that someone else's inability to show up consistently does not mean you were not enough. And slowly, something beautiful happens. Your nervous system begins to settle. You stop seeing their distance as a personal rejection of who you are. You stop interpreting their silence as proof that you were difficult to love. You stop allowing their behavior to control your emotional state. You begin finding peace that does not depend on whether they return. And that kind of healing is powerful because no one can take it away from you. An avoidant cannot give you that peace, and they cannot remove it from you. It comes from rebuilding your relationship with yourself. Now, after some time passes, do not be surprised if the avoidant reaches out again. Sometimes they come back not because they have completely transformed or suddenly figured everything out, but because your absence creates space for them to feel what they were previously avoiding. When you stop chasing them, they are no longer able to run from the emotional consequences of their choices. They may start thinking about the moments you shared. They may remember your patience, your kindness, and the safety they felt with you. They may wonder why you responded differently from others, why you did not beg, why you did not try to force your way back into their life, why you were able to walk away without losing yourself. And that can create a powerful curiosity. Because they are used to people reacting to their distance in predictable ways. They are used to being pursued after they withdraw. They are used to others trying to close the gap they created. But when you respond with calm confidence instead, you become something unfamiliar, not because you are playing a role, not because you are trying to make them jealous, but because you have reached a place where your peace matters more than chasing someone who is unsure about staying. And that emotional freedom is often the strongest message you can ever send. And sometimes that curiosity is what brings an avoidant back into your life. They may send a simple message, check in on you, react to something you shared, or find a small reason to reopen communication. But this is the moment where your awareness matters more than your emotions, because someone returning does not automatically mean they have changed. A message from them does not always mean they are ready to create a healthier relationship. Their return does not guarantee that they have faced their fears, healed their patterns, or learned how to show up consistently. Sometimes an avoidant comes back because they truly miss the connection they had with you. Sometimes they return because they realize your presence brought them comfort and safety. But other times they return because the silence feels uncomfortable, because they miss the attention, or because they want reassurance that they still have a place in your heart. And those reasons are very different. This is why you cannot measure someone's growth simply by whether they come back. The real question is not, did they return? The real question is, did they return differently? Are they willing to communicate instead of disappearing when things become difficult? Are they making an effort to understand your emotions instead of avoiding uncomfortable conversations? Are they showing consistency, emotional maturity, and genuine effort? Or are they simply returning because they miss what you provided, only to repeat the same cycle once the relationship starts feeling serious again? Those are the things you need to pay attention to. Your role is not to analyze every word they send, every reaction they make, or every small sign they give. You do not need to become trapped in trying to decode someone else's behavior. Your role is to remember what you learned when they were gone, because their absence may have revealed something important. It may have shown you that your happiness cannot depend on whether someone chooses to stay. It may have helped you understand that love should not feel like constantly waiting, wondering, or proving yourself. It may have reminded you that you deserve a relationship where both people are willing to make an effort. Your peace should never become the price you pay for someone else's uncertainty. Many avoidant individuals are comfortable with a dynamic where they can create distance and still feel that the other person will remain available. They may want the freedom to step away while knowing the connection is still waiting for them whenever they decide to return. But when you choose yourself and walk away with grace, that entire pattern changes. When you stop participating in the cycle of chasing and withdrawing, you challenge the belief that relationships always work that way. You show that love does not mean losing yourself. You show that your value does not depend on whether someone finally decides to recognize it. You become someone who understands a powerful truth. You were never supposed to convince someone to love you. You were never supposed to constantly prove that you deserve to be chosen. Healthy love is not created through chasing, begging, or trying to earn someone's attention. It is created when two people willingly choose each other and are both capable of showing up. That is not coldness. That is not giving up. That is emotional growth. That is what happens when you learn how to love someone while still protecting yourself. If you have ever experienced this kind of rejection, then you know how deeply confusing it can feel. There is a special kind of pain that comes from someone being close to you one day and distant the next. It can make you question the connection, question yourself, and even question whether your feelings were real. But hidden inside that pain is an important lesson. The way you respond after rejection determines the direction your healing takes. You do not have to destroy yourself because someone else struggles with closeness. You do not have to carry the burden of fixing another person's fears. You do not have to convince someone to stay when they are choosing distance. Sometimes your biggest transformation happens during the quiet moments. The moments when the phone stays silent. The moments when you wait for a message that never comes. The moments when you realize the person you wanted comfort from is the same person who created the pain. Those moments can feel empty at first, but they are actually where your strength begins to grow. In that silence, you learn how to comfort yourself. You learn how to validate your own emotions. You learn that sadness does not mean weakness. You learn that missing someone does not mean you have to run back to a situation that was hurting you. You discover that you can love someone and still choose yourself. You can understand someone's fears without allowing those fears to control your life. You can care about someone deeply while still recognizing that you deserve consistency and emotional safety. And that realization changes everything, because the strongest response to rejection is not revenge. It is not becoming bitter. It is not pretending you never cared. The strongest response is becoming someone who grows beyond the pain. The kind of growth that makes you stop accepting inconsistency as love. The kind of growth that helps you recognize the difference between someone who needs space and someone who simply cannot meet you emotionally. The kind of growth that prepares you for a relationship where someone does not disappear when things become vulnerable, but chooses to stay and work through them. A healthy relationship cannot survive when one person is always reaching and the other person is always retreating. Real connection requires two people who are willing to communicate, understand each other, and remain present even when emotions become uncomfortable. The right person will not make you feel like you have to chase their attention. They will not make you question whether you matter. They will not ask you to shrink yourself just so they can avoid facing their own fears. They will meet you with the same effort you give. They will stay curious about your heart. They will grow alongside you instead of leaving you to carry the emotional weight alone. So if you are sitting with the silence after an avoidant rejection, remember this. Their distance does not prove you are not enough. Their inability to show up does not mean you were impossible to love. Sometimes someone's withdrawal reveals their emotional capacity, not your worth. And when you stop searching for answers from someone who cannot give them, you begin discovering answers within yourself. That is where your power comes back, not when they finally return, not when they finally understand, but when you realize that your peace was always yours to protect.